2020 was an interesting season for the Minnesota Vikings in this respect. You start off the year, and they get off to a horrendous start. Minnesota Vikings fans are calling for Mike Zimmer's head, fire Mike Zimmer, starting to get delusions of grandeur, talking about Trevor Lawrence and tank for Trevor and the potential to get the #1 overall pick, or at least get high enough to be able to get a quarterback to get that guy for the future. To where then the Vikings kind of piece it together a little bit, and then they're in a position where, especially heading into that late season game against the Bears, like, you win that, you've got a chance, to handle your business and potentially make the playoffs, and they fall short there and ultimately miss the playoffs. A team that you would think about being coached by Mike Zimmer, that the offense is the impediment, the offense not scoring enough points is the problem, the defense is what's going to carry the team, the defense is what's going to make the difference, and all that wasn't true in 2020. The offense, especially as the season went along and they started to get into a rhythm and they changed a little bit about the way they operated and how they did things, like, that offense started to put it together. And it was the defense that was a problem. It was the defense that let the team down time after time after time. It was the defense that they made the move to go get Yannick Ngakoue and then traded him away a little bit later in the season, trying to recoup whatever draft capital they had. It was the defense that couldn't stop teams when they really needed to. It was the defense that let them down against the Bears. It's the defense that totally, completely imploded and melted down against the New Orleans Saints when they gave up 50-something points to the Saints late in the year. So a really weird dynamic for the Minnesota Vikings. And now you head into 2021. Makes me wonder just how hot the seat is for Mike Zimmer. Like, what's going to be required from him this year? How much different is this team going to look in 2021? You just cut former first-round pick Jeff Gladney because of a domestic abuse allegation and charge, off the field felony stuff. So somebody that you might have been counting on, even though he didn't exactly have a good rookie year, somebody you would have been counting on to contribute and do more in year 2 is not going to be in the picture at all. Lots of questions here about the Minnesota Vikings and what they can be this upcoming season. They made a lot of moves in the offseason, to their credit. Like, whether those moves pan out is a different story, but they are at least able to see the obvious of, hey, we need to mix it up on the defensive side of the ball specifically. We have got to change the personnel. We have got to upgrade and improve the personnel. And it feels like they did to some degree. We will see just how much when you look at all 3 levels of that defense. But they signed Dalvin Tomlinson and Patrick Peterson, Sheldon Richardson they brought back, Bashaud Breeland, Stephen Weatherly, brought back Everson Griffin. You've got Xavier Woods in the fold. You've got also Danielle Hunter returning from missing all of 2020 with the neck injury. So that's like a free agent signing in and of itself, a guy that you didn't have last year that was supposed to be your primary edge rusher. Wasn't there all year. Now you've got him back in the fold. So a lot of additions, a lot of infusion of new talent in new places on that defensive side of the ball. And you had a couple of players that you had leave via free agency. Kyle Rudolph was released. Riley Reif. Anthony Harris is gone. So a notable player from that secondary, that safety tandem, along with Harrison Smith. But a lot of changes, a lot of turnover to this roster, which was certainly needed. Like I said, time will tell in the weeks to come of this NFL season whether or not those moves made any type of real difference or not. In terms of the NFL draft, a lot of us projected or thought that offensive line, specifically left tackle, was going to be a place that they targeted, a place of big need, and it certainly was. They were able to peel back a little bit from 14 to, wasn't it, pick 23 in order to take Christian Darrisaw, the offensive tackle from Virginia Tech, who now joins an offensive line that this Vikings organization has invested quite a bit in terms of draft pick capital and resources over the past couple of seasons. So a lot of guys that they brought into the fold. You drafted Kellen Mond, so you're talking about, is he going to be a guy in the long term that could sit there and take over for Kirk Cousins? Doubt he's going to get an opportunity in 2021. Will he even get an opportunity in 2022? Who knows? He was a decent upside type of guy with some of the tools that he had. Made sense to draft somebody like him. Brought in Chaz Surratt, Wyatt Davis. I think I referenced in the Lions videos. My bad. Got thinking on the wrong things talking about Wyatt Davis. I shouldn't have done that. But either way, Darrisaw is obviously the big name here, the one that you're looking to contribute to be a day one starter, to be a guy that can effectively protect Kirk Cousins' blind side. Because when you look at this team and you look at how they're structured and how they look on paper, and that's always a key qualifier, on paper, Kirk Cousins is a strength of this team. He's not the one that you would hang your hat on the most. He's certainly not their best player on the team, let alone the best player on their offense, not even the best player in their offensive backfield. That, of course, will be running back Dalvin Cook. But when you look at the NFL and you look at the quarterback position, either you have a quarterback or you don't. And whereas I can question how much they've invested in Kirk Cousins in terms of the salary cap and how much that hamstrings them, how much you're really going to be able to do with a guy like Kirk Cousins at the helm, the reality is you could do much, much, much worse at the position. And sometimes, because you're a guy like Kirk Cousins and you don't have elite skills, you don't have elite talent, elite production, it could be easy to lump you in with a substandard scrub group. And he's not that. He's an average to sometimes slightly above average NFL starting quarterback. A guy you can win games with, not necessarily a guy you can win a ton of games because of. But there is a reliability and consistency there with Kirk Cousins, both in terms of his ability to answer the bell and play every Sunday, and that's important. The number one ability that any quarterback in the NFL needs to have is the ability of availability, and Kirk Cousins checks that box off. He's also consistent in terms of his performance. He has average to above average numbers, but they're not elite. Win-loss record with the Redskins, now the Washington football team, but the Minnesota Vikings as well, either teetering right at or right above or right below 500 pretty much year in and year out. And he's pretty consistent. You want consistency, if nothing else, out of the quarterback position, and Kirk Cousins at least gives them that. This team still has really good skill talent. Dalvin Cook, obviously, is an elite back. Justin Jefferson was a revelation as a first-round pick. Like, you trade away Stephon Diggs, and you're like, okay, so you trade away Diggs to draft a wide receiver, and then, damn, wouldn't you know, you got one that might even be better. And it's scary to think about what Justin Jefferson could be in the future. Still have Adam Thielen there, who's in more of a secondary role now, but still somebody you have to contend with. And you look at this team in terms of defensively. One thing that they hoped to bring back from last season was their ability to force turnovers. They were in a big schmoz in terms of tied for 10th in the league in total takeaways. They were 7th in interceptions. So this was a team, a defense that could turn over opposing offenses, which can be a dangerous combination when you look at some of the big play elements that this Vikings offense has with the Dalvin Cook and a Justin Jefferson most specifically. And now you throw an Irv Smith into the role of the primary tight end instead of Kyle Rudolph. Now you've got even more athleticism, more speed to contend with, more potential mismatches for opposing defenses. In terms of some of the question marks, you look at that young offensive line. Like I said, they've invested a lot there. When you talk about Brian O'Neill, former second-round pick, Garrett Bradbury, former first-round pick, now another first-round pick here. You're talking about with Christian Darrisaw. This is a team that has invested heavily in their offensive line unit. And if that pays off and pays off big, this team, the conversation about them changes quite a bit. But they really struggled even with their offensive line last year, even with some of the changes they made, in particular on the interior. And they certainly, I think, would have to hope that they're going to be better. And you've got Ezra Cleveland another year there playing inside at guard. So all these guys that they've drafted in the first couple of rounds, you're expecting to see the fruits of that investment come through. But right now, it is definitely a big question mark. How much is this pass rush going to improve? You get back to Danielle Hunter. Maybe Sheldon Richardson helps your pass rush a little bit, but Dalvin Tomlinson's more of a run stuffer. Does Everson Griffin even have anything left in him? Where is the other pass rush going to come from outside of a Danielle Hunter? Is the secondary going to be able to put up any resistance? They sucked last year. You're bringing in Patrick Peterson. That's greater in name than it is in actual performance and a potential ability at this stage of his career. You're now in season 11 for Patrick Peterson. He's not the same dynamic, all-pro level Patrick Peterson that he once was in the peak of his career with the Arizona Cardinals. So is this secondary going to be able to hold up? And when you look at the combination of questions about the pass rush and questions about the secondary, that could be a recipe for potential disaster there. Especially the guy you invested a first-round pick in Jeff Gladney, gone. Anthony Harris, gone. They've lost some pieces out of that secondary that already had questions. So we shall see. But that is a dangerous combination in a bad way to think about. When I look at their schedule, to me, last year, their season really got derailed with a horrendous start. What can they do in those first 6 games? They go to Cincinnati, to Arizona, Then they got 3 straight home games. It's against Seattle, Cleveland, and Detroit. So how much hay can you really make there? I don't know. And then you go to Carolina in week 6. But I think the watershed mark, or the minimum standard here, has to be you could be no worse than 3-3 in those first 6 games. If you're 4-2, even better. 5-1, you probably exceeded expectations. 2-4, now it's starting to feel a lot like last year. They have got to get off to a good start. If the Vikings want to have a chance to make the playoffs this year, finish above 500, maybe even have any delusions of putting the Bears and Lions in the rearview mirror and giving the Packers a run for it in that division, they've got to do well in the start. But then I look at, even if they do well at that start, the next 4 games after the bye, after week 7, are really going to make or break their season. They host Dallas, then they go to Baltimore, go to the Chargers, and then host Green Bay. Got to find a way to win bare minimum one of those games, and probably even 2, if you have any shot at all of sneaking into the playoffs in the NFC. I think it's kind of a tough schedule. You know, like for all the NFC North teams, they got to play the NFC West and they got to play the AFC North. They got lined up against 2 of the tougher divisions in football. Could be a rough year for the division as a whole outside of Green Bay. I look at this Vikings team and I say, right now, as it currently stands, it is fair to say they have the 2nd best quarterback in the division. I think that's fair to say. I think they have the 2nd best offense in the division. Defensively, I don't know about all that. Probably 3rd best in the division. But 2nd best quarterback, 2nd best offense. I look at them and I say that is enough to me to make me think that they're the 2nd best team in this division. They're better than the Bears and the Vikings the Bears and the Lions, at the quarterback position. They're better than the Bears and the Lions in terms of offense as a whole, certainly. So with that, as I kind of think about these other 3 teams in this division that are not Green Bay, I have the Lions bringing up the rear, the Bears somewhere in between the Lions and Vikings. But I think the Vikings, it could be a slightly above 500 team. But I think, you know, if I had to put money on it right now, I think 8 wins is kind of like the standard that I see for them. Maybe 8-9, 2nd in the division, outside chance at the playoffs. I just don't know that their defense is going to hold up enough. And, you know, at the end of the day, playing around 500 football is kind of the MO of Kirk Cousins over the years and teams led by Kirk Cousins. Why should this year be any different, right?